1. The discovery. Sophie had always felt a deep connection to Paris, a city where every cobblestone seemed to hold a story, and every street corner whispered secrets from the past. She moved to Paris with dreams of immersing herself in its rich history, hoping to find inspiration for her own writing. Little did she know that one fateful day would change her life forever. It was a crisp autumn morning when Sophie decided to visit the bustling flea market on the outskirts of the city. The market was a labyrinth of stalls, each brimming with treasures from bygone eras. As she wandered through the maze of antiques, vintage clothing, and peculiar trinkets, something caught her eye. Nestled between old books and yellowed maps was a small, weathered box. Intrigued, Sophie carefully lifted the lid, revealing a stack of delicate, time-worn letters tied together with a faded ribbon. The paper was brittle, and the ink had faded in places, but the elegance of the handwritten script was unmistakable. She felt a surge of excitement mixed with curiosity as she gently untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. The letter was dated June 14, 1942, and began with a heartfelt salutation, "My dearest Camille." As Sophie read the lines filled with love, longing, and promises, she could almost hear the voice of the writer, a man named Etienne. The letter spoke of a love that transcended the chaos of the world around them, a love that seemed as eternal as the city of Paris itself. Sophie was captivated. She sat down on a nearby bench, completely absorbed in the letters. Each one revealed a piece of a beautiful, yet tragic love story. Etienne and Camille had been separated by the war, and their letters were a testament to their unwavering devotion to each other despite the turmoil that surrounded them. The market buzzed with life around her, but Sophie was lost in a world of romance and history. She read letter after letter, piecing together the narrative of two lovers who had defied the odds to stay connected. The letters ended abruptly, leaving Sophie with more questions than answers. Who were Etienne and Camille? What had happened to them? Did they ever reunite after the war? These questions swirled in Sophie's mind as she carefully placed the letters back in the box. She knew she had to find out more about this couple. Their story had ignited a spark within her, and she felt compelled to uncover the truth. Determined to unravel the mystery, Sophie decided to seek the help of an expert. She recalled a friend mentioning a historian who specialized in World War II-era Paris. Jacques was known for his extensive knowledge and passion for uncovering hidden stories from the past. If anyone could help her, it would be him. With the box of letters clutched tightly in her hands, Sophie made her way to Jacques' office. The historian's workspace was a treasure trove of artifacts and documents, a testament to his dedication to preserving history. Jacques greeted her with a warm smile, his curiosity piqued when she explained the reason for her visit. As Sophie laid out the letters on Jacques' desk, she felt a sense of anticipation. Jacques carefully examined the letters, his eyes widening with each one he read. "These are extraordinary," he said finally, looking up at Sophie. "We must find out what happened to Etienne and Camille. Their story deserves to be told." Together, they embarked on a journey through the archives, libraries, and historical sites of Paris. With each new clue, Sophie and Jacques grew closer, their shared passion for history and the love story they were uncovering forging a bond between them. As the autumn leaves turned to winter snow, Sophie felt a warmth in her heart that she hadn't expected. The discovery of the letters had not only given her a story worth telling but also introduced her to someone who shared her love for the past and the belief that some stories are too important to be forgotten. And so, with determination and a growing sense of purpose, Sophie and Jacques set out to uncover the fate of Etienne and Camille, knowing that their journey had only just begun. 2. The historian. Sophie found herself standing at the threshold of Jacques' office, a mixture of excitement and nervousness coursing through her veins. The historian's workspace was a testament to his life's work, with shelves overflowing with books, documents, and artifacts from different eras. The air was filled with the faint scent of old paper and history. Jacques himself was an imposing figure, tall with a touch of gray at the temples and an aura of quiet intensity. His deep-set eyes sparkled with curiosity as he looked up from his desk, where he was meticulously cataloging a collection of wartime photographs. He offered Sophie a welcoming smile, which put her slightly at ease. "Sophie, welcome. Please, come in," Jacques said, his voice warm and inviting. He gestured to a chair opposite his desk. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," Sophie replied, taking a seat and placing the weathered box of letters in front of her. Jacques' eyes flickered with interest as he noticed the box. "Is this the treasure you mentioned over the phone?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. Sophie nodded, carefully opening the box and spreading the letters out on the desk. "I found these at a flea market. They're love letters from the 1940s, written by a man named Etienne to his beloved Camille. The letters end abruptly, and I couldn't help but wonder what happened to them." Jacques picked up the first letter, his fingers gently tracing the delicate handwriting. He read silently for a few moments before looking up at Sophie. "This is incredible." The letters provide a glimpse into a personal and poignant story from a very tumultuous time. "I'd be more than happy to help you uncover their fate." Sophie felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Jacques. I don't even know where to begin." Jacques smiled reassuringly. "We'll start by analyzing the letters for any clues about their identities and locations. We can cross-reference any details with historical records and archives." Over the next few weeks, Sophie and Jacques delved into the world of Etienne and Camille. They spent hours poring over the letters, deciphering addresses, dates, and any mention of significant events or locations. Jacques' extensive knowledge of wartime Paris proved invaluable, and his passion for history was contagious. One evening, as they sat in Jacques' cozy office surrounded by piles of documents, Jacques leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Sophie, the way these letters are written, it's clear that Etienne and Camille shared something truly special. Their love for each other shines through every word." Sophie nodded, feeling a deep connection to the couple she had never met. "I just hope we can find out what happened to them. They deserve to have their story told." Jacques' eyes softened as he looked at her. "And we will, Sophie. With a bit of perseverance and a lot of digging, we'll piece together their story." Their investigation led them to various historical archives, libraries, and even personal interviews with elderly Parisians who might have known the couple or heard about them. With each new piece of information, the picture of Etienne and Camille's lives became clearer. One particularly cold afternoon, Sophie and Jacques found themselves in a dusty old archive building, sifting through war records. As they reviewed a list of names, Jacques suddenly paused, his finger tracing a line on the page. "Sophie, look at this," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Etienne Dufresne, a member of the French resistance. He was reported missing in action in 1943. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. "Missing in action? Does that mean he might have been captured or?" Jacques nodded. "It's possible. But it's also possible that he survived and went into hiding. We need to find more records to be sure." Their search intensified as they followed the trail of Etienne's involvement in the resistance. They discovered that he had been a brave and dedicated member, fighting against the Nazi occupation of France. This revelation added a new layer of depth to his letters, as Sophie and Jacques realized the constant danger Etienne had faced while writing to Camille. As they pieced together Etienne's movements, they also uncovered more about Camille. She had been a nurse, working tirelessly to care for the wounded during the war. Her letters were filled with love and worry, her strength and resilience shining through despite the hardships she faced. Late one evening, after hours of research, Sophie and Jacques sat in a quiet cafe, sharing a bottle of wine. The warmth of the cafe contrasted with the chill of the night outside, creating a cozy and intimate atmosphere. Jacques raised his glass. To Etienne and Camille. May we soon uncover the rest of their story. Sophie clinked her glass against his, feeling a warmth that went beyond the wine. To Etienne and Camille, she echoed. And to new friendships forged through the past. As they sipped their wine and shared stories, Sophie realized that her journey to uncover the truth about Etienne and Camille had brought her something unexpected but wonderful, a kindred spirit in Jacques. Their shared passion for history and the love story they were unraveling had created a bond that felt both timeless and new. With renewed determination and a growing sense of companionship, Sophie and Jacques prepared to dive even deeper into the past, knowing that the secrets of Etienne and Camille's love were within reach. 3. A journey through time. Sophie and Jacques stood at the entrance of the Musée de la Résistance, an imposing building dedicated to preserving the memory of those who had fought in the French resistance during World War II. Their investigation had led them here, driven by the tantalizing clues they had uncovered about Etienne's role in the resistance movement. The cold winter wind whipped around them, but the anticipation of new discoveries kept them warm. Inside the museum, the air was thick with history. Exhibits displayed uniforms, weapons, and personal artifacts from the war, each piece telling a story of courage and sacrifice. Sophie felt a deep sense of reverence as she walked through the halls, thinking of Etienne and the dangerous life he had led. Jacques led the way to the archives section, where they were greeted by an elderly archivist named Madame Dubois. She had a sharp mind and an encyclopedic knowledge of the resistance fighters. Jacques explained their quest, and Madame Dubois nodded thoughtfully. Etienne Dufresne, you say? Yes, I remember coming across his name. He was quite the hero, she said, leading them to a back room filled with rows of filing cabinets. Let me see what I can find for you. Sophie and Jacques waited in tense silence as Madame Dubois sifted through the files. Finally, she pulled out a thick folder and handed it to Jacques. These are all the records we have on Etienne. I hope they help. Jacques thanked her, and they sat down at a nearby table to examine the contents of the folder. It was filled with detailed reports, photographs, and personal accounts of Etienne's missions. Sophie felt a mixture of excitement and sorrow as she read through the documents, learning more about the man who had risked everything for his country and his love for Camille. One report caught her eye. It detailed a mission in early 1943, where Etienne and his comrades had sabotaged a German supply train. The mission had been successful, but Etienne had been wounded and captured during the operation. Sophie felt a lump in her throat as she imagined the fear and pain he must have endured. We need to find out what happened to him after his capture, Jacques said, his voice determined. There must be more records somewhere. Their search led them to a remote village in the French countryside, where Etienne had been held in a makeshift prison. The village was quaint and picturesque, with cobblestone streets and charming old houses. It was hard to imagine such a peaceful place having witnessed the horrors of war. They met with the village historian, a kind woman named Brigitte, who guided them to the site of the former prison. It was now a small memorial garden, a tribute to the resistance fighters who had been held there. Sophie felt a profound sense of respect as she stood among the flowers and plaques, thinking of Etienne and his fellow prisoners. Brigitte shared stories passed down from villagers who had lived through the war. According to local legend, Etienne had managed to escape with the help of a sympathetic guard. He had been hidden by the villagers until he could make his way back to Paris. Sophie felt a glimmer of hope at this news, realizing that Etienne's story might not have ended in that prison. As they walked through the village, Jacques and Sophie discussed their next steps. We need to find out if Etienne made it back to Paris and what happened to Camille during that time, Jacques said. There must be more letters or records that can help us piece together the rest of their story. Their journey took them to the outskirts of Paris, to a small apartment that had once been Camille's home. The current occupant, an elderly woman named Madame Lefebvre, welcomed them warmly. She had known Camille during the war and was delighted to share her memories. Camille was a remarkable woman, Madame Lefebvre said, her eyes misty with nostalgia. She worked tirelessly as a nurse, always putting others before herself. She never gave up hope that Etienne would return to her. Madame Lefebvre led them to a dusty old chest in the attic, filled with mementos from Camille's life. Among the items, they found a bundle of letters tied with a familiar ribbon. Sophie's heart raced as she carefully opened one of the letters. It was from Etienne, written after his escape, detailing his harrowing journey back to Paris and his longing to be reunited with Camille. As they read through the letters, Sophie and Jacques learned that Etienne had indeed made it back to Paris and had resumed his role in the resistance. The letters were filled with passion and hope, but also with the reality of the dangers they faced. Despite the hardships, their love had remained strong, a beacon of light in the darkest of times. Their investigation also uncovered hospital records showing that Camille had continued her work as a nurse, treating wounded soldiers and resistance fighters. Her dedication and bravery had saved countless lives, and she had never stopped believing in Etienne's return. One evening, as they sat by the Seine, reflecting on their journey, Jacques took Sophie's hand. "We've uncovered so much about Etienne and Camille, but there's still more to their story. We need to keep searching, not just for their sake, but for ours as well." Sophie nodded, feeling a deep connection to both the past and the present. "Yes, we owe it to them to tell their story in full. And maybe, along the way, we'll discover something about ourselves too." With renewed determination, they set out to uncover the final pieces of Etienne and Camille's story, knowing that their journey through time was far from over. 4. Blossoming romance. The chill of winter began to thaw, giving way to the gentle warmth of spring. Paris, with its blooming gardens and bustling streets, seemed to come alive with a renewed energy. As the city awakened, so did the budding romance between Sophie and Jacques. Their shared journey to uncover Etienne and Camille's story had forged a bond that neither had anticipated. Long days spent in libraries and archives were followed by evenings of spirited conversation over glasses of wine in quaint bistros. The more they learned about the past, the more they discovered about each other, and a deep connection began to form. One particularly beautiful afternoon, Jacques suggested they take a break from their research and enjoy the city's springtime charm. They decided to visit the Jardin des Tuileries, a place both historical and serene, where the scent of flowers mingled with the laughter of children and the murmur of lovers strolling hand in hand. As they walked through the garden, Sophie couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment. The sun's rays filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the path. She glanced at Jacques, who seemed lost in thought, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Jacques, thank you for suggesting this. I think we both needed a break," Sophie said, breaking the comfortable silence. Jacques turned to her, his eyes twinkling. "I couldn't agree more. Sometimes, it's important to step back and appreciate the beauty around us. Besides, I thought it might be nice to experience a bit of the romance that Paris is so famous for." Sophie felt a blush creep up her cheeks. Paris does have a way of making everything feel more magical. They found a quiet bench overlooking a fountain and sat down, the gentle sound of water adding to the peaceful atmosphere. Jacques pulled out a small book from his coat pocket, one that Sophie recognized instantly. It was a collection of poems by Rilke. "Would you like me to read you something?" Jacques asked, his voice gentle. "I'd love that," Sophie replied, leaning closer to him. Jacques opened the book and began to read, his deep voice bringing the words to life. The poem spoke of love and longing, of the beauty found in the simplest moments. As Sophie listened, she felt a warmth spread through her, not just from the sun, but from the presence of the man beside her. When he finished, Jacques closed the book and looked at Sophie, his expression tender. "Sophie, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. Working with you on this project, getting to know you, it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life." Sophie's heart skipped a beat. "I feel the same way, Jacques. This journey has been incredible, not just because of the history we're uncovering, but because of the connection we've formed. Jacques took her hand in his touch sending a shiver down her spine. I think I might be falling in love with you, Sophie. Sophie felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of joy. Jacques, I think I might be falling in love with you too. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a perfect, timeless embrace. Jacques leaned in, and Sophie closed her eyes, their lips meeting in a gentle, heartfelt kiss. The kiss was everything Sophie had ever dreamed of, sweet, tender, and filled with promise. When they finally pulled apart, they remained close, foreheads touching, basking in the newfound intimacy between them. As the days turned into weeks, their romance continued to blossom. They spent more time together outside of their research, exploring the hidden gems of Paris, sharing stories of their pasts, and dreaming about the future. The city that had brought them together became the backdrop for their love story, every corner holding a memory, every moment shared deepening their bond. One evening, as they strolled along the Seine, the lights of the city reflecting in the water, Jacques stopped and turned to Sophie. Do you believe in fate, Sophie? Sophie smiled, thinking of all the coincidences and serendipitous moments that had led them here. I think I do. How else could we have found each other in this vast city? Jacques took her hands in his. I believe that some stories are meant to be, just like Etienne and Camille's. And I believe that our story is just beginning. Sophie felt her heart swell with happiness. I believe that too, Jacques. As they continued their walk, the future stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities. Their love, like the city they had both come to cherish, was timeless and enduring. And with each step they took together, they knew that their journey, both in uncovering the past and building their future, was far from over. 5. Trials and Tribulations. Spring had given way to the lazy warmth of summer, and Paris glowed under the golden sun. The city seemed to hum with life, yet for Sophie and Jacques, the days were tinged with a growing tension. As their investigation deepened, so did the complexities of their personal and professional lives. Sophie had become engrossed in writing about Etienne and Camille, determined to bring their love story to life. Her days were filled with research and long hours at her laptop, and while she was passionate about her work, the pressure was mounting. She felt a responsibility to do justice to the history she was uncovering, but balancing this with her growing feelings for Jacques was proving challenging. Jacques, too, was under strain. His university had given him a tight deadline for a new publication, and the demands of his academic responsibilities weighed heavily on him. Despite his best efforts to support Sophie and remain involved in their project, the pressures of his own work were becoming harder to manage. Their once perfect harmony began to fray. Sophie and Jacques found themselves arguing over small things, their patience worn thin by the stress they were under. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion about the direction of their research, Sophie retreated to her apartment, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. As she sat on her balcony, overlooking the twinkling lights of the city, Sophie wondered if they had been naive to think their romance could thrive amidst such pressures. She loved Jacques deeply, but the challenges they were facing seemed insurmountable. The next morning, Jacques knocked on her door, looking as weary and troubled as she felt. Sophie, we need to talk, he said, his voice heavy with concern. She nodded, inviting him in. They sat in her cozy living room, the tension palpable. Jacques, I don't know how much longer we can keep going like this, Sophie admitted, her voice breaking. The research, our work, our relationship, it's all becoming too much. Jacques took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. I know, Sophie. I've been feeling it too. But I believe in us, in what we're doing. We just need to find a way to balance everything. They decided to take a brief hiatus from their research to focus on their relationship and their individual work commitments. It was a difficult decision, but they hoped that some distance would help them gain perspective and alleviate the growing strain. During this time, Sophie threw herself into writing, finding solace in the stories of Etienne and Camille. She imagined the hardships they had faced, the strength of their love despite the odds. Their story became a source of inspiration, a reminder that true love could endure even the most trying circumstances. Jacques, too, found a renewed sense of purpose. He immersed himself in his academic work, using the break to fulfill his commitments and clear his mind. Yet, even in their separation, he missed Sophie terribly. The distance made him realize just how much she meant to him, and how much he wanted their relationship to succeed. After a few weeks, they met again at their favorite café by the Seine. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of the river flowing gently in the background. Jacques looked at Sophie, his eyes filled with determination. "Sophie, I don't want to lose what we have. I know it's been difficult, but I believe we can find a way through this." Sophie felt tears welling up, but this time they were tears of relief. "I believe that too, Jacques. I think we just need to communicate better, to support each other more. We've come so far, and I don't want to give up now." They made a pact to be more open with each other, to share their worries and burdens instead of letting them fester. They agreed to set aside time for themselves, separate from their work and research, to nurture their relationship and rekindle the joy they had found in each other. As they resumed their investigation into Etienne and Camille's story, they did so with a renewed sense of partnership. They supported each other through the late nights and the dead ends, celebrating every small victory and comforting each other in moments of doubt. Their efforts soon bore fruit. They uncovered a final batch of letters, hidden away in an old attic in the countryside, that revealed the poignant conclusion to Etienne and Camille's story. The lovers had reunited after the war, their love undiminished by the years of separation and hardship. They had lived the rest of their lives together, cherishing each moment as a testament to the strength of their bond. Sophie and Jacques were deeply moved by this discovery. As they read the letters, they felt an overwhelming sense of connection to Etienne and Camille, as if their own struggles and triumphs mirrored those of the lovers they had come to know so intimately. One evening, as they stood on a bridge overlooking the Seine, Jacques took Sophie's hand and said, "Sophie, our journey hasn't been easy, but it's been worth every moment. Just like Etienne and Camille, we've faced our trials and come out stronger. I want to build a future with you, filled with love and adventure." Sophie smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. "I want that too, Jacques. Let's write our own love story, one that will stand the test of time." With the city of Paris as their witness, Sophie and Jacques embraced, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that their love was as enduring as the stories they had uncovered. 6. A love rekindled. The summer days grew longer, and with the final chapter of Etienne and Camille's story revealed, Sophie and Jacques felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Their journey had been filled with trials, but their love, like the history they uncovered, proved resilient and enduring. Sophie and Jacques decided to take a trip to the French countryside where Etienne and Camille had spent their final years together. They hoped to connect even more deeply with the lovers' legacy, and perhaps find inspiration for the final chapters of Sophie's book. The village, with its picturesque houses and lush landscapes, felt like a step back in time. As they walked through the cobblestone streets, hand in hand, they found the quaint cottage that had once belonged to Etienne and Camille. The current owners, an elderly couple, welcomed them warmly, delighted to share the story of their home's previous inhabitants. Inside, the cottage was filled with an old-world charm, with vintage furniture and walls adorned with photographs from a bygone era. One afternoon, as they sat in the cottage's garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and the soft hum of bees, Sophie felt a surge of inspiration. She began to write, capturing the essence of Etienne and Camille's love story, intertwined with her own journey with Jacques. Jacques, sitting beside her, read over her shoulder, offering insights and encouragement. Their time in the countryside was a period of reflection and renewal. They spent their days exploring the village, talking to locals who still remembered Etienne and Camille, and their nights under the stars, sharing dreams and hopes for their future. The bond between them grew stronger, forged by the trials they had overcome and the history they had uncovered together. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Jacques took Sophie's hand and led her to a secluded spot overlooking the rolling hills. He had a look of determination in his eyes, and Sophie felt her heart skip a beat. "Sophie, these past months have been incredible. We've uncovered a beautiful love story and created our own along the way. I can't imagine my life without you," Jacques said, his voice filled with emotion. He knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Sophie, will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she nodded, unable to find the words. "Yes, Jacques, 1,000 times yes." Jacques slipped the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, feeling the weight of their journey and the promise of their future together. Their kiss was tender and filled with the certainty of their love, a love that had been tested and had only grown stronger. Back in Paris, Sophie finished her book, dedicating it to the memory of Etienne and Camille, and to Jacques, her own love story. The book launch was a success, drawing in readers who were captivated by the tale of love that had endured through war and time. The city buzzed with excitement, and Sophie felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. On a crisp autumn evening, as they stood on the same bridge overlooking the Seine where they had once vowed to support each other, Jacques took Sophie in his arms. "We've come full circle, haven't we?" he whispered. Sophie smiled, looking into his eyes. "Yes, and I wouldn't change a thing. Our love, like Etienne and Camille's, is timeless." They kissed, their hearts full of the journey they had shared and the future that awaited them. The lights of Paris sparkled around them, reflecting in the river below, a testament to the enduring power of love. As they walked home, hand in hand, they knew that their story was just beginning. They had uncovered a love that had been hidden by time, and in doing so, had discovered a love of their own that was just as profound and enduring. Their journey had been one of discovery, not only of the past, but of their own hearts, and they were ready to face the future together, knowing that their love would continue to blossom and thrive, no matter what challenges lay ahead.